I remember growing up lying on my bedroom floor and just staring up at the light on the ceiling. And I remember laying there for what felt like hours. I don't know what I was thinking about. Sometimes I was just thinking about nothing. And I remember reading lots and lots and lots of books because I will always be a book nerd. And I remember as a kid having all of these figurines, and I would get out all my figurines and I would create storylines for them. They were like in a war and battling because I was reading the Prydain Chronicles at the time, which is similar on a smaller scale to Lord of the Rings. And I was reading The Hobbit as well. And so I would create these storylines in my head. And I'm just sitting here and thinking about the absence of quiet in my brain, in my head. And mostly there's to-do lists, but also a lot of songs. When I am particularly dysregulated, or more like all the time, because I'm somewhat dysregulated all the time, I have songs playing constantly in my head. When I first started brain retraining a few years back, the music stopped for a while and it was quiet. And that was beautiful. But for whatever reason, it started up again, and it's been at quite a crescendo lately. Just songs, 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 whatever I heard last on the radio. I'm listening to Hosier in my head right now. And I like his music, but I don't like it playing constantly. And I think about kids who grow up in this environment of digital stimulation and overwhelm, and even my kids, where we set somewhat healthy limits, mostly healthy limits on screens. It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to live in this world anymore and not feel that burden of constant stimulation. And it just, I just was thinking about how our kids don't have too much of that experience of just lying on the rug and staring up at the ceiling and just doing nothing. And we don't have that experience anymore as adults. I really would challenge you to think about how often you allow yourself to be bored. My kids say they're bored all the time, and I remember being a kid and also saying I was bored all the time. One of my favorite memories, honestly, is being a kid, and my friend Lily was sleeping over, and we told my mom we were bored. And I remember her getting out an encyclopedia. And this was, we're at a sleepover, just the two of us. And my mom gets out this encyclopedia and she reads us a section on flies. This was like a genius moment of parenting. Like, I don't know what she was trying to do, but it was the funniest thing, because I remember Lily and I just laughing at all of this information about flies. And I don't remember any of it, but I remember it was funny and it was entertaining, and we weren't bored anymore. And it was so simple. And my 6-year-old woke up at 5:30 this morning, and I was doing my workout. I always get up at 5 and work out because I like having that quiet time. And she got up and she's lying on the couch behind me, and after a little while, she said, "Mom, I'm bored. I have nothing to do. Can I watch screens? Can I do Duolingo?" And even though Duolingo is educational, I still don't want her on screens before school. That's one of our rules. And so I said, "No, if you're bored, then, find something creative to do." And eventually she did. She kind of sat there for a few minutes, and then she went over there, which you can't see, to our boxes of Legos, and she started creating with Legos. And that was a really beautiful thing to see. I love when my kids can take that boredom and do something creative. That doesn't always happen. And if there's the two of them, that boredom often turns into fighting between them. But if there's just one of them, and I am very clear, like, no, screens are not happening right now. You're going to have to just be bored. They'll go find something to do. They'll go get creative. And I guess I'm just thinking a lot about how, even for myself, I'm someone who, as a younger person, was always reading or writing or just doing something creative. And these days, I feel like my creative juices are mostly taken up by my full-time job. And that makes sense. It's something that's engaging my brain constantly, so I don't have a whole lot left over. And then I've got my kids, and they engage my brain constantly as well. And so what little there is for me, I kind of use for brain retraining or working out. But I also know from experience that when I really consciously take breaks from screens, from YouTube, from podcasts, and that's about it for me, because I don't do Instagram anymore. I don't do Facebook. I never did Twitter, and I never did TikTok. I've never even downloaded TikTok. My cat is sitting on my mic. Hold on. So I don't have a whole lot of social media things I use anymore, but I do spend way more time than I would like to on YouTube, which is somewhat ironic, I'm aware. To come on YouTube and say, maybe you shouldn't be on YouTube. But I know that when I very consciously decide to reduce the number of inputs going into my brain, there's so much more brain space. I have more mental space. I have more focus. I can think better. I have more openness for other people as well. And I find that I generally take these conscious breaks when I'm really feeling at a breaking point, and then I come back to it, and then it kind of sucks me back in, and I have to get to that breaking point, or that, maybe not a breaking point, but just a point where I'm feeling overwhelmed again, before I can say, okay, I need to take a conscious break. But I also know there are some people who never take breaks, and I do understand why. Because so many of us are in this constant state of fight or flight, and being on screens, it gives us that dopamine hit that we're looking for. It gives us that ability to dissociate, to not be in our bodies and not be present in our lives, and not have to deal with what is real and what is in front of us. And a lot of the time, that's not even something bad. A lot of the time, what people are actually scared of, and I know this is quite often the case for me, is being present and just being here and grounded. You become so much more conscious of how precious life is, of how precious these bodies that we reside in are, how precious the people around us are, and you're much more aware of how finite it all is and how it could be gone in a second. And that's hard. That's hard for people to sit with and be with. And so a lot of people, they use their screens as a way to just not be fully present in their bodies and in their life, because somehow it feels like if you're not fully present and you're not fully loving and just like embracing it, then it won't be so sad when it's all gone, which is not true at all. It's going to be super sad anytime, you know, you lose anything, anybody. But I think for a lot of us, it's hard to be in that. But it's so much more beautiful. It's so much more beautiful. And this is what I come to in my meditation, in my brain retraining, in my creative practices, all the time, is that life is so, so beautiful. And our bodies are so beautiful. And the people we love are so beautiful. And the plants around us and the trees around us. And it's all so beautiful. And yes, it's finite and none of it will last forever. But that's why we're here, right? That is why we're here. That is why there is this big, beautiful universe. Is for us and the plants and the bees and the birds and all of us to experience this. So I want us to experience it, and I challenge you to experience it. And again, this is ironic, but I will challenge you to take a conscious break from your screens and from all inputs, including podcasts, including the news, including the radio. Just take a conscious break. Give your brain space and watch what happens in 3 days, because it's usually like those first 3 days of silence that things really feel like they open up and you come back to who you were before technology took over. Like, I remember life before cell phones. A lot of people don't. A lot of people, now there was no life before cell phones, but I remember it, and it was much more expansive, and there was so much more space for personal creativity and for like being who you are. And I don't mean in an external way. There's so much room on social media, on YouTube, on TikTok, for being creative and being yourself, and that's beautiful. But I mean, there was more space for being with yourself and just loving yourself and enjoying yourself, having fun with yourself, you know, because you didn't have a phone that you took with you everywhere you went. And so you had to just embrace yourself and be in the boredom and be in the fun of life. Anyway, that is what's on my mind today, just thinking about how loud it is inside my head and how loud it is, I'm sure it is, inside many of your heads, and just challenging you to make a decision. You know, maybe just 3 days. 3 days. Put your phones down. Stop distracting yourself. Be present. Read a book. Really allow yourself to appreciate your life, your body, whatever state that is in. And I do know, I've worked with women for years, I know when you ask them to be present in their bodies, I haven't worked with as many men, but I'm sure it's the same. I know that when you ask people to be present in their bodies, you get a lot of different experiences and a lot of different emotions that come up. And for a lot of people, it's not like, oh wow, this body is amazing, and how do I judge it so much when it does so much? That's what I tend to think is like, wow, why do I judge my body so much? Because damn, it's amazing. But for a lot of people, other things come up too. A lot of grief, a lot of pain, a lot of things. And so I want to recognize that and acknowledge that and still say there is so much value to just getting present and being with yourself and loving whatever is. All right, I think that's all I have for today. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you are tuning in, keep tuning in. I'll be back.